Hello, my name is Blake Abramowitz, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on Silverstone Circuit, which is a racetrack in the UK. So just some background about the circuit itself. It was originally established as a Royal Air Force base during World War II. It was used between 1942 and 1947, and it was really just established because at the time, big major event, huge war going on in Europe. The UK needed it to kind of act as another operational base for their planes and whatnot, just another place for them to take off from, land at, because so much was going on. They just needed that extra space and room, I guess, in a way, that extra sort of operational capability that it offered. Um, and it was abandoned after the war. Obviously, they didn't really need it anymore. They were kind of downsizing the military because, a major event like that wasn't really going on anymore. So the need for another airstrip like this just wasn't really there or present at the moment. And so in 1948, the first sort of track was established at this abandoned airstrip. A bunch of friends who were into motor racing and stuff knew of the track. They were from the area and they knew it had been abandoned. So they figured they could use it to sort of race their own cars around. Originally, there wasn't so much of like a track layout as opposed to just like the airships that were still built at the time. So they were kind of racing over both the airships themselves and also the unpaved gravel and land around the strips. And it kind of grew in popularity since 1948. A lot of people started coming by the track more and more, started to want to race it more. And in 1950, Silverstone was a bit more established by then. It had a bit more of like an actual track layout, and it served as the first Grand Prix for the Formula One season, the first season ever of Formula One. In 1951, it was sold from the Royal Automobile Club to the BRDC, which is the British Racing Drivers Club, which is a very prestigious racing club in the UK, and they still act as the sole private owners of Silverstone. The BRDC maintains the track through hosting several racing series and motorsport events, such as Formula One and MotoGP, which is like the highest level of motorcycle racing in the world. And then future plans kind of involve obviously maintaining the track still, but also building new trackside vacation style housing that people can live in and pay for. So just some recent usage. Over the last 10 years, Silverstone has consistently hosted Formula One, MotoGP, and the British GT Championship. And up until 2019, it also was part of the World Endurance Championship calendar. So think of that as like the 24 hours of Le Mans, those kind of cars that race for like long hours. They used to race at Silverstone. Not anymore since 2019, though, unfortunately. While the venue is almost exclusively used for motorsport type events, it also has its own type of festival annually that people can come to and kind of be on the track and be around. They have like musical presentations and stuff like that. Like they have artists come by, so it's pretty cool. They also have a lot of stuff tied towards like motorsport history during that festival. And during this 3-day event, like I said, it has like live music, car shows, and other types of entertainment that people would be familiar with. So Silverstone's income, it has a capacity of around 150,000. It can pretty much comfortably host any type of motorsport event because it is so large and has such a big capacity. In 2022, it was reported that the track profited 14 million pounds because of like the motorsport events that it held, as well as like the festivals and clubs, as well as paying out memberships to people, and also like the museum that it has attached to the track. That was also in part because that year's F1 race in 2022 had over 480,000 fans attend the 4-day event from Thursday to Sunday, from practice to qualifying to the actual race itself. Tickets for the British Grand Prix, which is hosted at Silverstone, range anywhere from $600 to about 1,200, so it can kind of just depend. And obviously, as the value goes up and Formula One, and other motorsport events become more popular, you should expect prices to raise a bit. While there wasn't information out there necessarily about the use of ads or the income that they get from ads, the track does have a multitude of sponsorships that are both tied to what it signs itself, but also the different events that it hosts, such as MotoGP and Formula One. And it can also rent out space for conferences and exhibitions at the attached like buildings and stuff that it has next to the track. Operation expenses for Silverstone, typically they have around 120 to 160 full-time employees. However, during big events such as Formula One Grand Prix, they hire a lot of extra help to help run things, run the booths and the stands and stuff like that. In 2022, the track spent 8.4 million pounds on paying its employees And then it also spent that same year 1.5 million pounds on maintenance, machinery, other kind of operational expenses. So they can range anywhere from maintaining the track, the curbs, to also sort of like the barricades and the grandstands, stuff like that. For 2022, the track was taxed around 1.2 million pounds. And though the track is maintained and owned by the BRDC, they have a sort of subsidiary company called Silverstone Circus Limited, which acts as like the main operational head of the track on day-to-day type of businesses and stuff like that. Operational expenses, again, Silverstone is used for and by a variety of motorsport events, though the biggest two that it has currently are Formula One, which is the biggest, and MotoGP. And it has been reported before that Formula One generates over half of the track's annual income and revenue, and that's just every year because Formula One is just so big, especially in the UK and at a track like Silverstone. Due to the track's popularity, though, and also these events, um, the track kind of has this prestige of being the lone British race for both of them. And then because of the prestige that Formula One has, tracks actually pay Formula One to host. So Silverstone pays Formula One around $26 million to host and be the sole British Grand Prix during the season. And it is believed that they pay MotoGP around £5 million to host. And because the track is privately owned, still the BRDC is responsible for paying all these kind of expenses out. So the effects on the community that Silverstone kind of has because it's just so big, especially with the Formula One events that it has every year. The British Grand Prix is just majorly popular, just because of the history and the prestige that it offers, being the first race ever in Formula One, and also just because there are a lot of British drivers in Formula One, such as Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris. Um, so the effects on the community, just the surrounding area, during new developments, jobs are created. So, for example, this new trackside housing, they obviously need to hire new people to build that. So people from the local community obviously benefit from that, such as construction workers, companies like that need to come and kind of build that thing, work with the track to make that happen. It's been reported that the F1 race alone, the British Grand Prix, brings in around 5.6 million pounds to the region. That's kind of within a 50-mile radius of the track. It should be noted, though, that that was reported in 2003, so you can only imagine that that price has risen exponentially to nowadays, especially with the popularity of Formula One just growing. And like we saw in 2022, like the major crowds that this race drew, so you can only imagine that the economic impact that the race and the track brings to the area is just so much bigger now. And it's estimated like nowadays that the F1 race brings in around 100 million pounds just for the Northamptonshire area, which is kind of like the county that the track resides in. However, obviously there are going to be some cons associated with such a large track and hosting such large events. During racing events, you can expect a lot of traffic in the area. It can kind of congest things. That's been reported multiple times by local media and stuff from Northamptonshire and in places around Silverstone as well. Local businesses can really only rely on an influx in revenue during those big times, such as the MotoGP events and Formula One. So the rest of the year, obviously they have other events, but you don't really expect, they shouldn't expect that big kind of influx from like visitors from not only the UK and Europe, but just around the world as well, coming to see the races. And another thing too is like obviously these different motorsport events have been getting better with it, pushing for initiatives towards helping the environment out and stuff. But you should expect a lot of air pollution, not just from the vehicles on the track, but everyone coming to the area to see the race, driving in, and also a lot of famous people flying in to come see such a large and prestigious racetrack. So just sort of some future expenses and income for Silverstone. So the biggest thing is that recently, like a few months ago, Formula One and Silverstone reached an agreement to keep Silverstone as the main track and the sole host of the British Grand Prix up until 2034. So that's pretty big for the track. I think a lot of people were expecting this in a way just because of the popularity of the track and the prestige and history that it has, but it's great that that finally came through. So obviously the track can expect a lot of income from hosting the Formula One races every year until then, until they get a new contract. There are also talks to bring back the World Endurance Championship. Like I said, those like long endurance cars that can go for hours and whatnot back to Silverstone. And there's been talks about maybe bringing it back for 2025. Also in 2024, I expected Silverstone should finally open those vacation style housing places that are trackside. So as you can see in that picture, they're kind of building them right there. And then finally, they've reaffirmed their commitment to kind of cycle funds back into the track, growing the grandstands and stuff. Like a lot of people might expect that they would kind of pocket the money themselves, sort of the directors and whatnot, but they have said and reaffirmed their commitment that a lot of the income would be put back into the track just to help maintain it and uphold its prestige, especially with what it's going to be hosting in the future. And then finally, some recommendations. Obviously, I think Silverstone's doing a great thing already. They've been doing a great thing for many years now, obviously. But these are just some sort of recommendations that I personally feel could help the track out. Make things a bit cooler, maybe bring in more fans, more money. Obviously, as mentioned, they are working to bring back the World Endurance Championship. But again, like I would say, like really heavily push for that. That'd just be great to for more income, kind of help grow the track as well in popularity. A lot of people like World Endurance Championship races, so I think bringing it back to Silverstone would be really cool. Another thing would just be having more type of festivals, using the grandstands more, maybe for like music acts and whatnot. Another thing that I thought would be really cool actually is they could have like bicycle races there. Maybe kind of like nationwide events in the UK or like European type events or even globally. I'm just kind of having races on the track. I think that would be pretty cool. Another thing would be just kind of offering the opportunity for people to race on the track, not necessarily with like race cars, but say like expensive cars that they bought recently, such as like a Ferrari or an Aston Martin or something. Just because you own a big expensive race car like that doesn't mean you know how to drive it necessarily. So I think it'd be pretty cool to offer that to people to like learn how to use their cars in a setting such as Silverstone. You can actually push the limits there. And then finally, this might cost a bit to maintain this, but I think it'd be really cool. And they could offer a way to have maybe like a helicopter fly around races and fans can pay to sit in the helicopter and that way they can kind of follow the action without just being stuck in one grandstand location and just like, waiting for the cars to come by, whereas they can kind of follow the action. And I think that would be really cool. And if they can make that work, they can make a lot of money from that. And then finally, here are my references that I used for this presentation about Silverstone. Thank you.